Tonight, he defended Donald Trump inside the White House. Now, he says the Constitution isn't strong enough to handle this president.
Trump's abuses of power are unprecedented.
Plus, is MAGA cracking? Shock resignations, bitter rivalries, and media clashes foreshadow life after Trump.
On the Republican Party, I'm going to have to oppose it because I hate them too much.
Also, are ICE agents telling the truth about their operations on America's streets? A judge and video suggests they're not. And James Carville says he's finally figured out the way forward for liberals. Rage against the machine. Live at the table, Scott Jennings, Bakari Sellers, Katie Miller, and Neera Tanden. Americans with different perspectives aren't talking to each other, but here they do. Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip in Washington. Let's get right to what America's talking about. Is the United States Constitution equipped to handle Donald Trump? Well, his former White House lawyer says it's not even close. Take this week, for example. We are still seeing boat strikes against alleged cartels in the Caribbean, actions that have sparked military resignations and allies refusing to be a part of something that they think is potentially illegal. And secondly, when half a dozen senators warned that military members should not follow illegal orders, the president floated their executions, and the Pentagon threatened Mark Kelly with a court-martial. And third, Trump's revenge tour. It hit an embarrassing setback as cases against James Comey and Letitia James were both dismissed, in part due to the ham-fisted rush to charge his foes. Here's Ty Cobb, Trump's former White House lawyer, about all of that.
The Constitution really is not adequate to deal with a president as evil as Trump is, somebody whose desire to accumulate and abuse power. The main concerns always are his resort to violence and authoritarianism. Never before in American history, I don't think, have most Americans been as concerned about their president and his demented narcissism leading him toward revenge and violence.
All right, so Scott, I'll let you respond to that because, obviously he feels strongly, but it's also in the context of Trump just coming off of a threat that these lawmakers should be tried for treason, and then he endorsed the idea that they could be hung for their alleged crimes. So there is a lot of retribution and violence coming from the president.
Well, he's plenty mad about that video that they put out raising the idea that he's issued illegal orders, and in the days that follow, they went on television and were asked directly, what illegal orders? And nobody could name any. And one of them, that's supposed to be the smart moderate, Alyssa Slotkin, started citing Hollywood movies as the rationale for the video. So it seems pretty crazy to me that Democrats would raise the prospect of illegal orders and not be able to name any. Venezuela, look, there's a lot of differences of opinion out there. And on Comey and James, it wasn't about the merits of the case. It was about the appointment of the prosecutor, which is a different thing. But beyond all of that, my rebuttal to this is that the U.S. Constitution has been serving us quite well for 250 years, and there are remedies for everything in the Constitution. But the number one remedy for any political issue in America is called an election. And we just had one in November, and I think there's certain people that haven't gotten over it.
I actually agree with Scott's conclusion. I don't think that the Constitution is not built for Donald Trump. I do think elections happen. Elections have consequences. I was just looking at a Pew poll recently talking about how Hispanic voters are now having buyer's remorse. You see Aiden Ross, you see a litany of young voters, young, particularly white male voters, who are saying this is not what I voted for. So yeah, let's not give Trump too much credit for the havoc that he's causing. If we go to the specific examples that you named, is it unconstitutional to nuke those individuals who are traveling in the Caribbean? The answer is definitely yes. Are those United States senators who are doing their job, are they protected by the First Amendment? Yes. And the Uniform Code of Military Justice? Yes. And then I would love for my Republicans and conservatives at the table, there's no question if you have to put Mark Kelly's military record up against Donald Trump, there's no question who admirably served our country, and the other person's Donald Trump. The problem Democrats have is that we have to make that argument to the American public. And why I love Donald Trump going on these tangents is because He can't fix, nobody in the White House can fix the problems at hand. Affordability is the #1 issue in this country, and they are tripping over themselves doing all this other stuff, and the American public, they realize it.
Well, I served in the Pentagon under Secretary Robert Gates, who was a Republican in a Democratic administration, and that was something that we used to do back then and actually have bipartisanship throughout an administration. And that was the clearest example I had working with our men and women in the armed forces, was this idea of principle and values. And we even had conversations about how to make sure that war was the last resort. And Secretary Gates was famous for saying that if we don't do enough on the diplomacy and the human rights and the development side, then yes, you will have to buy me more ammunition. That is what he said to the Senate and to leaders who are ultimately responsible for declarations of war and interventions. Now, I will blame Congress for this. You can't complain about not having power when you've given it all away, right? That's happened on the national security side of giving more and more war powers and authority to the president and not having it sit with Congress.
Let me play a little bit more from Ty Cobb because he addressed that very thing also in that interview. Listen.
Trump has neutered Congress. Actually, they've probably neutered themselves through their cowardice and greed. But they have, ceded basically all control to the president, and he dictates everything Mike Johnson does.
The co-equal branches of government that are supposed to be functioning right now, what Ty Cobb is arguing, what a lot of people would argue, is that it's not really functioning quite that way. And even now, we've talked about this a bit, but Republicans in Congress are also feeling like they are being treated like carpet as opposed to like a co-equal branch of government. So is the Constitution really functioning the way it's supposed to be in this moment?
When Democrats shut down the government for a period of almost 2 months, what do you expect will happen when you grind things to a halt and one party holds another party hostage over something that didn't even end up happening in the end? I want to go back to something that Bakari said. He said that those orders that were given the drug boats in Venezuela were illegal. Can you cite those statutes, please?
Yes, because it's actually called the Due Process Clause of the United States of America. Because can you point to one of those boats that actually had drugs on them? Do you know that? Do you know about the Trinidadians who were killed innocently, who were just fishermen? Can you actually kill those fishermen without due process? So the answer to the question is yes. I can cite the Constitution, just as Scott did.
If you go and say that those were members of Al-Qaeda or ISIS coming to our shores with enough drugs or enough ammunition to kill 100,000 Americans, wouldn't you expect our commander-in-chief to take action to stop that? That's what's happening here. That is what's happened, by the way. That's what happens in every war zone, whether you go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia. Go there. Let's talk about it.
Give me one name of one individual that you can compare to Al-Qaeda coming through that had enough fentanyl to kill all these Americans. Can you name one?
Let's go to what these drug boats are talking about, which is that we are actively ensuring that the war on drugs that we've been doing for 50 years, which has not worked one single day.
Yeah, right. We can agree on that.
It hasn't been successful one day. So wouldn't you want our country to try something different? You talked about elections and why they're important. In 2024, President Trump won and beat Kamala Harris under stopping the war on drugs, under stopping the entrance of illegal drugs into our country, under stopping the surge of illegal immigration into our country. And that's exactly what
Can I just put a fine point on this?
Yeah, go
just,
ahead.
Just really quickly. I think that my point maybe differs from yours, which is fine. But I believe that individuals deserve some modicum of due process. And I think that that is something that's enshrined in our Constitution. If you have some facts that you wanted to tell the audience tonight about the individuals that you know that were brought in or bringing in, and maybe if we arrested them, maybe if we actually saw what was going on, maybe if there wasn't an ulterior motive, because what I do know, and I think you know this as well, that there were innocent Trinidadians who were just on a fishing boat who died as a result of that. I know that they're military members that swore an oath to this country who now have a problem with that. So I
think you're cherry-picking facts.
The other part is that, we also know that the United States did have some of these people in custody, and rather than actually try them, which we have done in the past, we let them go. We also don't know, they've never said explicitly what drugs are being carried on these boats, but the fentanyl, we know, is not coming from Venezuela. But the issue here is about the legality and about what happens when there is a system that doesn't contemplate whether things are legal or not. And the British seem to think that there might be things in our actions in the Caribbean that are illegal. We've had a top military officer resign from his post, retired years early. So there are some indications here that people are not comfortable with the legality of what's going on here.
And I will say,
at least in this instance.
This is, like many other things the Trump administration is doing, is blowing a massive hole through what were already gaps in the system. I mean, even in the Obama administration, the George Bush administration, going back to the start of the war on terror, people were uncomfortable with how wide open, if you said, we're going to designate this a terrorist organization. That now gives us war powers that don't have to go through Congress, and we're allowed to use drone strikes, and we're allowed to use rendition. These are serious ethical questions the military has been wrestling with for 20 plus years. On top of that, the United States, because of its power, has been able to get away with and keep itself out of things like the UN legal systems, about the Rome Statute, or any of the criminal court stuff, which is, again, the U.S. protecting itself. Ultimately, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and what may now be Venezuela, the United States has done a great job of making sure that other countries are not able to hold the U.S. accountable.
All right, we're going to leave it there for that conversation. Next for us, does all the MAGA infighting foreshadow the battle for the post-Trump era? Plus, James Carville is telling liberals there's only one way to pull them from the abyss: getting angry. We'll debate that next.